It's a common scenario we can all identify with. You focus on a goal. You learn as much as you can. You work as hard as you can. You achieve as much as you can. And then, with the finish line in sight, your attention fades. It's at that moment when you're at your most vulnerable for failure. It takes discipline and a plan to be able to address this phenomenon. Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk and figure this out.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jollis.
Let me start with a quick story. A few years ago, I was invited on a Segway tour of Washington, D.C. Having never been on a Segway before, I was a bit anxious, but I didn't really have a choice. I had auctioned off a 10-person tour for a charity, and part of the package was for me to attend. I was stuck. So when I showed up, I was hoping to entertain the group. I was also hoping not to break my neck on that crazy Segway. We were given a short class on how to ride and operate our Segway. Our instructor immediately calmed many of our fears down, convincing us that anyone can learn to ride a Segway, and quickly. Hey, he was right, and we were all surprised at how rapidly we were able to master the skills necessary for our 3-hour tour around the city. One of the final things he said was to assure us how safe the Segway was and that he would not allow us to continue if he didn't believe we were ready to go. And at that point, his eyes narrowed a bit, and he told us this: stay vigilant regarding the conversations we've had about safety. And please remember that the most dangerous part of our trip together is not now, but at the very end of our trip. The reason for that is that you'll have a false sense of security and you'll be vulnerable to losing your focus and being reckless. I locked eyes with one of the other riders, exchanged a quick quizzical, he's not talking about me look, and away we segued. True to form, we began our journey excited and eager to put our newfound training into action. We were cautious and focused, just like we'd been taught. Now, if you've never been on a Segway, do yourself a favor and give it a try, because I can't remember when I enjoyed a tour of a city more, particularly one I thought I knew well. We started out in perfect formation, zipping here and there and stopping to see this and that. Within an hour, our formation wasn't quite as perfect as it had been, and our focus was slipping a bit. But in all fairness, we were getting pretty good at that Segway thing. Our driving record remained perfect until the last 15 minutes, when almost on cue, one Segway driver hit a tree, one slipped off a curb, and two more were involved in a collision with each other. What a coincidence. Or was it? After all, we had been warned. The moral of this story is not a unique one. It's quite common to meticulously prepare for activities and events when we aren't sure we're ready. We take our preparation seriously and we maintain focus. Ironically, we may very well be at our best when we think we're at our worst. Then, much like that Segway, as our skill level goes up, our attention to detail goes down, and we are at our most vulnerable. For instance, a weary nation continues to cope with the pandemic. Scientists have not only told us what to do to stay safe, they've also discovered a vaccine to help us end this crisis. With an end in sight and news of increased numbers of cases, logic would state that now would be the time to be even more diligent about the safety precautions we take. And yet, for many, attention to detail has gone down, and we've never been more vulnerable. Here's another example. You've worked hard to identify a prospect in business. You've meticulously put together a proposal, engaged in multiple conversations, and earned the right to work with a new client. With a contract in hand, logic would state that now would be the time to triple your efforts to exceed expectations. And yet, for many, With the intensity of the chase complete, attention to detail goes down and we become vulnerable. Here, I'll give you one more. You've worked hard on a project that required meticulous planning, preparation, and execution, and you were up for the task at every turn. With the project up and running successfully, logic would state that now would be the time to leave your stamp. You want everyone to remember you with a powerful wrap up and follow up. And yet, for many, our attention wanes, our focus shifts to the next project, and we're once again vulnerable. As a distance runner, I was taught to run strongly and to finish strongly by always running through the finish line. The reality is that it's the very end when the races are won or lost. Watch a football game or listen to those who play the game, and you'll see the most dangerous time on the field is not the beginning or middle of a play, but right near the end of the play. Once again, that's when athletes tend to let up, lose focus, and get injured. This doesn't have to happen to you. Run through the tape. Play until the whistle blows. Keep wearing a mask. And for goodness sakes, work with your clients until you've been able to conclude whatever has been agreed upon. Make sure you don't let up until the job is completely done and everything has been signed, sealed, and delivered.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.